Welcome to another episode of me reviewing highlights. I only managed to do one video last week, but I think that was a packed video. Let's see how today's video goes, and with that, I'll switch over to my readwise and start. The first one is rather long. The well lived life. We can't live in community and expect everything to be perfect or exactly the way we want it to be. Yet there is something so important to be gained from imperfection. I understand the desire for control. Each of us is on our own path, and we want to be in charge of how we walk it. But the beauty is that our paths can and will intersect with the paths of others. This can be such a beautiful thing. We can share the way in which we travel the path. We can tell others what we have learned and where we are going. We can learn from them. This, I feel, was something that was very, very required for me to hear a few years back. I'm thinking about 10 years back or so. That was when community, in not in the technical sense, as in like not in technology communities, not in that sense, but social communities, local ones, particularly, for example, they were something I would run away from. And I think I quite resonate with this notion over here. This this notion of imperfection in communities and control and walking our own path and everything. So yeah, I'm quite glad to say that I've kind of moved away from this notion since a few years now. But yes, this is a very good reminder. Nevertheless, I'll move on. Originals. The number one principle is that you must think for yourself. I think pretty straightforward, but I'm sure there is some context missing. I've just highlighted this particular section, and yeah, I think you can take it from any perspective. It's still valid. It's still quite generic, so there's not much to talk about here. Moving on to kill it with fire. Assuming you fully understand the requirements because an existing system is operational is a critical mistake. One of the advantages of building a new system is that the team is more aware of the unknowns. Existing systems can be a distraction. This book talks a lot about refactoring, and this is related to that. And one of the factors that goes into a rewrite or the decision to rewrite a software, that's we usually start with very high confidence when we are working on a rewrite on a refactoring project or a rewriting project, and that's because like the highlight says over here, we think we fully understand the requirements because the existing system has already been built, it's already there. We think that we fully understand the requirements, we just have to follow the same requirements, and we forget a lot of constraints that went into making all the tiny decisions that the system, that the existing system that might have been there in operation for years and years, and it's now what we see is a snapshot of in time of what it is right now, and all the trade-offs that have been made, all the decisions that have gone in, they're all kind of lost. We just think that okay, there is an all the requirements are clear, and we begin rewriting software, and that's the critical mistake. It's um, it's like, what does this say? One of the advantages of, yeah, okay, existing systems can be a distraction, and we are if you're starting from a greenfield project, not a rewrite, as in a project that has never been built before, the team will understand that there can be many many unknowns. But if there is already an existing system, it's very difficult for the team to say that okay, oh, there can be many unknowns, because the assumption is that, oh, the existing system is there won't be that many unknowns, but there will be. That's what we see now every so often. Moving on. Remote, not distant. Adopting safe to try decisions will help you move forward rather than wait for the perfect solutions. When feeling stuck, ask, will the decision move the team backward or cause harm that cannot be mitigated promptly? This is another way of saying that you don't need to wait for complete information before beginning. There are reversible decisions, and if a decision is reversible, start it. Understand what's the harm, how much, what's the mitigation cost in case we have to roll back a decision and so on. Understand that and move on. Basically, avoid waiting for 100% information or a perfect solution. We've talked about this enough number of times. Moving on. As a man thinketh. Character is simply the sum of our thoughts, and character manifests itself in our environment and through our circumstances. So the outer condition of our life, of your life, is always a reflection of your inner state. Okay, it's there's not much to say again over here. I think it's just a interpretation. The author is saying that what we, shall I say, feel inside. The author is not talking about feelings over here, but still, what we think inside, what we think of ourselves inside, what we feel inside, that is what we manifest in our environment. That is what we attract, so to speak. It's I know attraction is a kind of a that it's a dicey term. So basically, the author is saying that it's a reflection of your inner state, and I think that has to do with perception. It's not that you would physically manifest changes in your environment based on your internal state. That's not what happens. Sometimes yes, but that's not what happens. What happens is your perception of things, and that causes physical changes both inside and outside in your environment. Moving on. The earned life. Compliance and accountability are two sides of the same coin. They are both burdens that we bear alone as individuals, one imposed on us by others, the other self imposed. Follow up introduces the coercive force of the outside world to the mix. So both of these factors, or I forget the what the author called. They were, it's these two are part of four factors that the author describes. So compliance and accountability, like the author says, they're just two sides of the same coin. They look very very similar, but compliance is something that others enforce on us. We have to comply to something, and accountability is something that we impose on ourselves. That is, I'm holding myself accountable to something, or I'm holding someone accountable, but that becomes compliance again. I'm basically asking somebody to comply to my requirements. So accountability is essentially self-driven, that I'm imposing on myself that I will do something. So and follow-up introduces the coercive force. So in both of these cases, the follow-up is what will introduce the coercive forces. So accountability in itself, well, I don't think that we let ourselves go so easily. We forgive ourselves so easily. I don't think that's there. But follow up introduces the coercive mix, that because there is going to be a follow up, you're more particular about an activity, about whatever you said you would do. Going on to kill it with fire again. Meetings, reports, and dialogues are the least efficient feedback loops. Feedback loops are most effective when the operator feels the impact rather than just hearing about it. That's because people are naturally inclined to misinterpret information to suit what they already want to believe. It is more difficult to do that when the feedback is delivered in the form of inconvenience, disruption, interruptions, and additional work. So the author is saying that. So first of all, the author is talking about feedback loops over here, and whatever work that we do, what is the impact of that on the system or on the organization or on the environment? There needs to be feedback loop, that there needs to be some kind of information flowing back to the writers of the software, the implementers, or whoever is on the team, so that there is there are learnings and there are corrections built into the system, basically. So meetings, reports, and dialogues, they're the least efficient feedback loops. It gets back to it, but there is an essential delay in the place, because meetings would happen when you schedule them to happen. Reports, it happens at its own pace. So there could be an incident, and the information flowing back through meetings, reports, and dialogues, they're very slow, essentially. And the author is then going on to say that they are most effective when the operator feels the impact. That is, as a writer of the software, or whatever, as a user of the system, as an implementer of the system, you feel the impact the most. And this is essentially going towards the way, going towards the discussion of support teams. For example, how do you build support teams? How do you decide who gets to be on the support team? And this is, of course, leading to the idea that the support team should consist of people who are responsible for building the software, because that's how they feel the impact most efficiently. So Yes, like the author goes on to say that because we are stuck in our beliefs, if we hear meetings, reports, dialogues, all of these methods are essentially third-party methods. Somebody else is telling us that this happened, and we don't want to believe that. That's again like a self-defense mechanism. We don't want to believe that. But if it happens to us, it's more difficult for us to not believe. So if it's delivered in form of inconvenience, disruption, interruptions, essentially all of these things would happen if you're on a support team. That is when it's very difficult to ignore all of these things and say that what we believe is true. Moving on, kill it with fire. Software engineers are incentivized to forego tried and true approaches in favor of new frontiers. Left to their own devices, software engineers will proliferate tools, ignoring feature overlaps for the sake of that one thing tool X does better than tool Y. That is relevant only in that specific situation. We see this. The incentives are currently in place that software engineers will always go for a new piece of technology. The industry as a whole rewards this. So if there is like a newer piece of technology, that's regardless of how that, like, what's the environment in which it should be used, it's people will swarm towards it. And all of these things, proliferate rules, ignoring feature overlaps for the sake of that one thing. We see this all the time right now. In fact, there are so many jokes about it. So yeah, moving on. Get it done. In close relationships, people focus on how much we, that is their team, get in total rather than who gets more. They'll choose to get more, but also less as long as the bottom line is more for the group. So pretty straightforward. I don't think I had to add much to this. I'll just say that this book is driven by research material. So, whatever the author is saying over here, for example, this it's actually a reflection of, it's a result of an experiment. Um, and of course, behavioral experiments are very long term. So, it's a result of a very long term experiment that people focus on how much we get in close relationships, not what I get. Moving on, getting things done. Asking yourself what's the next action undermines the victim mentality. It presupposes that there is a possibility of change and that there is something you can do to make it happen. That is the assumed affirmation in the behavior. There is a central notion in the philosophy of GTD, getting things done, that we ask ourselves what's the next action. We don't think of in things in terms of projects or initiatives because they don't exist. What exists, the only thing that can exist is what's the next action. Project is, it's if you think about it, and the book goes quite deep into it, that a project is a project never really exists. It's just a set of ideas. It doesn't physically exist. What exists is that when you define that, okay, this is your first action, and that begins the project, so to speak. So that's really the only thing that exists. The next, the first action, and the action after that, and one after that, and the one after that, and so on, and until you reach some point in the future where enough actions have been completed, and you can say that project has been done. But really, it's just a series of actions, and of course, this is the it's like that saying, missing the forest for the trees. Sure, okay, but the point is that we when we in our um, what's the word, in our desire to reach efficiency, we have to start with what's the next action, because we because the project doesn't exist, so to speak. uh, if that is what exists on our to-do list and that is what exists in our project management software, we would never be able to get anything started. Because whenever we see that, okay, project, and that is when you're trying to think, oh, what will you do about that project. Whereas if you're going to break it down in terms of actions, you know exactly what you need to do. And that's also what this highlight says. Because when we ask ourselves that, we let go of the victim mentality. We have an idea that we can change things, we have that idea, we can make it happen. And that is the assumed affirmation in our behavior. Because we will only ask what is the next action because we believe that we can do something about it. So we are not the victims anymore. We are the ones who can make change happen. And with that, we are at the end of our highlights. 15 minutes, still a little bit longer than I would like, but yeah, okay. Um, so that's it for today, I guess, and see you soon. Take care.